Hello and thanks for choosing the Notts TV debate. I'm Frances Finn and as ever I'll drill down into the news with the help of three passionate locals, and they've all got fingers in pies in local business, so let's meet them. Ian Baxter co-owns Baxter Freight, which is a Nottingham haulage company. Sangeeta Traina is the founder of Legalise. That's a city centre cafe and deli which has been going 20 years now. And Jeff Allen owns Castle Sound and Vision on Maid Marian Way, and you've been there a long time as well, Jeff, haven't you?
Nearly 30 years.
Wowza. Well, thank you all for your time and for coming in. I'm really interested to hear what these three have got to say about the news, because as always we do like to talk about what's happening in Nottinghamshire, and I'm going to start with a question about the city centre. How clean do you think it is? I am asking because the City Council has just done a day of cleaning up in the Hockley area. It's got a plan to visit particular pockets of the city and do a clean-up. Police as well involved, things like antisocial behaviour, and it's in Nottingham partnering with them. So, how badly does it need it? How clean is Nottingham? I'll start with you, Sangeeta, because you're plonked right there with the deli. How clean is it?
It feels like the day of cleaning that they've done might have been the only day they've ever used to clean Nottingham. In the 20 years we have been around, I think this is probably at this pinnacle of the messiest, the hardest to see and the hardest to cope with it's ever been.
So what do you mean by that?
So we're on Victoria Street. We have the beautiful trams and all those running past us on the front. In the back, we've got Bottle Lane, which has now got businesses in. You know, it's got the front end of an entertainment business. But my staff are scared to go outside that door at a certain time, just because, one, it's filthy, and two, that just attracts antisocial behaviour at the back door. And considering that draws businesses in, it's awful. It's very, very frightening.
That's disappointing to hear. Jeff, what's your take on it over on Maid Marian Way?
I've got to totally agree. I think it's dirtier than it's ever been, the city at the moment. I mean, I've now acquired some graffiti on the shutters on my shop, so we're going to spend money getting that removed. You know, there are people sleeping on the street on Maid Marian Way. I think it's catastrophic would be the best way of describing it.
We're not in the city centre, but when I come to the city centre, I would say it is pretty dirty. What I would say though is we, maybe once a month, our staff go and litter pick out in the area where we are, and they love to do it, and actually it makes a contribution to cleaning up the city. So I would say if we want to clean a city, we need to own it between all of us.
How much are business rates though?
Yeah, the business rate and the additional rates that are there to help us live in a perfect world, as they put it on the bid view. I think we pay our dues. I'm quite happy to roll up my sleeves and go out and help, but do we get some of that back then?
Yes,
well,
it's interesting.
We don't, because they've just taken away business rates relief, haven't they? So businesses are now facing a massive burden, a big increase in rates. And without getting too political about it, there's a double whammy, because the government has also increased national insurance. So as well as increasing the base cost of doing business, they've also put a tax on employing people, which, if you're trying to get employment up so you can get more taxation from people, seems a really stupid thing to do.
Well, I mean, this is an area we'll perhaps come on to. We know that our coffers as a nation, we're told, you know, are running ever low. The bills are getting higher and higher, and it's the same for the City Council. Of course, the City Council declared itself effectively bankrupt in the last few years. They've had people from the government come in to oversee how it's being run. Efforts are being made to streamline, to make every pound go further. As it says, its responsibilities are growing with adult social care, and so on and so on. So you can understand, can't you, maybe how the cleaning side of things has perhaps had to take a hit. Do you have sympathy for the council in that area, Ian?
Well, I mean, I don't think they're doing a fantastic job. I think we can probably almost all agree on that topic. But I also think, you know, our expectation of them is probably too high. They're doing so many things. And I just think really we should take some ownership ourselves. You know, if we want a better, cleaner, brighter city, let's do something about it. We can all contribute. And when people contribute, they then take the pride not to mess the place up again, I think. So a lot of countries
don't you think
do
the
this.
people that are likely to help with the litter pick are not the people really that are to blame for chucking all the rubbish into the street, usually.
Of course, if you just take a select small group of people, but I think if we try and change culture to say, as a city, we own our own problems, that would help us, wouldn't it?
I wonder, though, do you think the danger, when you read the comments on social media, Not TV's put a little video, if you missed it, about the day of cleaning and the people in Hockley benefiting from it, but many comments on social media saying, well, shouldn't we be doing this every day? If you have a down at heel feeling around a place, then as you said with Bottle Lane, is the danger it sort of goes down and down and down? Yes. People don't want to come in. The comments on social media saying, we stay away now because it's horrible. Have we got to that?
I do feel for the council, I think the people who work in the council are struggling with what they're allowed or what they can and cannot do. We used to use, I use the word used to use, the council to collect our bins from the back alley. And we had a problem with them picking them up and all this kind of thing, to the point where there was mounds of rubbish, food rubbish, that I didn't know what to do with. So this was Christmas time. We had this massive fight, and the answer I got was, why don't you move the business to someone who cares? And so I moved the business to someone who cares. Sure. So I'm thinking
that
if
the business of the refuse collection.
Yes, and
away from the council.
Away from the council.
The council said, move it to someone who cares.
Yes.
That's astonishing. We'll leave that with our journalists, and maybe we'll pick that one up and see what the council has to say about that. I'm sure its position might differ from individual officers. So sure. Just to make that clear. Just a final thing then, Jeff. Can you see this improving? What needs to happen? What should we be doing? I mean, Ian says we should all be out in the streets picking it all up. What do you think?
I think Ian's got a point, and we did try and organise this some years ago. We certainly clean outside our shop every morning. Right. Because that's what we do. Yeah. Because unfortunately we've got a student residence next door and a litter bin outside, and when that gets full, people think it's okay to just dump stuff by the side of the bin. Mm-hmm. So there's a bit of a clean-up job every day to do. I've always had a particular hatred of chewing gum on pavements. And we've never seemed to do anything about that. Okay. We have all these enforcement people going around making it difficult for businesses to park vans, but they're not doing anything about that sort of antisocial behaviour. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I just want to move us on to an imaginary budget you have to spend. The budget's real, but let's imagine you're in charge of it. £2 billion, no less, coming to the East Midlands to be spent on our public transport. So Nottinghamshire will obviously get a chunk of that. Where will you spend it? As a haulier, obviously, you're interested in transport, but where would you spend money on our transport?
Well, there's always an argument for improving our roads and including the surfacing of roads, obviously, potholes and all that stuff, budget for that. But I think it needs to go...
road, rail and bus connections.
Yeah, it needs to go everywhere, doesn't it? Everywhere the system is kind of creaking. So better trains, more buses, investment in the tram. I think we have so many requirements to improve our public transport that I would
So maybe nothing new as such, but make what we've got
making it
better?
stronger, better.
Okay.
I was in Luxembourg last summer. Luxembourg has free public transport into the city, and the system is incredible, and it keeps cars out of the city and works very, very well. So
that's good. Just moving quickly on before the break, Sangeeta, what would you do?
I think we need to go further afield with with the transport, whether it's the tram or some form of easier access from other sides of the city, not just concentrated on the ones where we're at the minute.
With the tram, you mean?
With the tram in
All
particular.
right, interesting. Where would you like a new line?
Wouldn't mind it going south of the city towards, we've got the football ground and everything else down that way, but there's nowhere to get to it.
Interesting. There has been talk about going west, isn't there? Sort of more towards the Beeston end of town. Oh no, there was already, but further. And north up into maybe Nuttall, that kind of area. But yeah, what do you think, Jeff? Just finally.
Well, can I rewind slightly and say everyone's going, oh, we've got £2 billion coming in for transport. Let's just remember at this point that the government can only get money from two places, us or borrowing.
Well,
so let's not assume that this is some magic money tree.
Yeah.
We are paying for this, or the future generations are paying for it because of borrowing. So whether this should be a priority with the country and the state it's in at the moment, I would ask that question.
So you're not even sure we should be getting the money for transport?
Got it.
What do you think should be getting the money instead?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's up to the politicians to figure out. But certainly, the dire state of our economy at the moment, spending £2 billion in Nottingham on transport, while it sounds like this panacea.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, we'll talk some more about local news and also what's happening further afield after a short break. Don't go away. Hello, welcome back to the Notts TV debate. I'm Frances Finn. On the panel this episode, we have Ian Baxter, Sangeeta China and Jeff Allen. So in the news, obviously our defence budget has been talked about a lot, and the government is saying it's going to increase the spending on defence. And one of the things, therefore, I'm wondering about is whether at some point we may see the reintroduction of conscription or national service, because we're told we're more vulnerable again as a nation, and in other nations they do have this. It's not just something that is a throwback to the post-war era. Sweden, for instance, at the moment, since 2017, every young person is sent off for some training and they spend some time learning the skills that they might need should they be engaged in war, and then they're put on a list, like a reserves list. What about that idea? And some people say, oh, that's what our young people need. Give them some backbone, you hear the post-war generation say. Now, we'll start with you, Ian, because you've got some experience of this. Tell us your unusual other role.
So I am the honorary consul for Finland in this part of the UK. And Finland has national service. It always has had since the Second World War. And so young men, I think it's mostly men, I guess women can also join in, but I don't think it's compulsory for women, get to go and spend, I think, 1 year doing their basic national service training. And I think in that country, in the context they find themselves in, don't forget they're next to Russia, so they've always worried about that potential threat. For historic reasons, not just geographic reasons. And so I think they're pretty keen on it as an idea, and I think it serves them well. I'm not saying that we should run away and adopt it, but I think there is something there that could be considered as we've got to increase our defence budget, as we've got to focus on national security again.
It seems to me that they want to be ready to take up arms any moment. It's that mentality, isn't it? Which in this nation for a long time we were told, oh, it's absolutely fine. All the threats now are digital and cyber, but now it's a very different landscape, isn't it? With Russia and Ukraine, the Middle East. Do you think we need to get more serious about it, Sangeeta? National service.
It is worrying, with two teenage boys in the house. And the way they are, I probably will be all pro it at the minute. But any kind of discipline that isn't come from me, it's fantastic. Yeah. But I think if it's teaching kids a skill I do think it should be girls as well as boys.
Yeah.
Then I think it's an added skill. It's like an added on to a school year. I think that's probably a good thing. Whether it's to pick up a gun or whatever is
Yeah.
a bit wild. But to teach a skill, and that could be used in warfare, wouldn't go amiss.
I wonder how it would go down though, Jeff. Really? I mean, you look at our 18-year-olds and to have them for a year, let's say, sent off.
It could be quite funny to do for the people who are there,
Yeah.
given what you've just said about 18-year-olds. But I think it would be a wonderful thing to do. And I know you're concerned about weaponry, but actually, I did some time in the forces, and it teaches you respect for weapons, which is one of the things that I think the youngsters don't have these days, particularly the gangs. They just don't understand weaponry. They don't understand the damage it can do. The other thing it does is creates a fantastic teamwork bond. I mean, if you think particularly of special forces, where they work in bricks of six soldiers, they're taking care of each other. And I think that's part of what we've lost in society with the digital age. We take care of ourselves and we assume our friendship group is on our phone or whichever tablet we happen to be using at the time. And to get people in an environment where they have to do things that require everyone to act in concert to achieve the objective would be a fantastic thing, and it would help to restore some of the things that's been lost in society.
That's such an interesting view, because that could also be used, I guess, as a reason why not to do it, in the sense that culturally our young people are perhaps not of a mind to be mixing with larger groups, being put into contexts they don't feel comfortable with, you could say. And so would it be a transgression of their rights? That's how it would be received? I
mean, life is about dealing with uncomfortable situations.
Well, how do we pay for this?
Presumably we've got a defence budget and we're struggling to recruit and put full-time regular soldiers in. So if we can build up a reserve army, it's going to cost less than taking on full-time regular soldiers.
Yeah, and we're expanding the budget. And the question is, where are we going to spend that money, isn't it? If we're going to 3% of GDP, where are we going to spend the money? And I think there is some potential in this with our young people.
And in Finland then, is it post 18?
Yeah.
And then they are expected to live at home with their parents, or do they get housed in barracks?
No, I think they will go to barracks. They'll go away for
So we'd need a great expansion of that, wouldn't we? And an improvement in our infrastructure, because we believe that the housing at the moment needs a lot of investment for the military. Yes. So this is not a thing that is not without cost and investment needed.
But the great thing is, as part of the training, you could teach them how to build things, couldn't you?
Well, that's
and they could be building their own barracks. And then they would come out with a skill.
Yeah.
I mean, this is...
And I think it's part of the national psyche as well. Yeah. We will defend ourselves. We will not be pushed around by Russia or by anyone else.
Or America even. Have them dictate ourselves.
And that's, I think, is an important lesson we need to think about.
There's another thing, of course. I don't know what your perceptions are. I mean, you, Sangi, to work with younger people more than I do. But there are 9 million people economically inactive in the UK right now. Some of those are through ill health and physical incapacity. Not all of them, of course. If everybody at 18 was taken through, quite a rigorous period of activity, learning, being constructive, would you think we'd benefit from that, or am I in danger here of stereotyping young people?
Not really. We get quite a mix of young people. I'm not saying that they all don't know how to work, but I think, when people have started working or being told what to do to a certain degree from an earlier age, we're finding those people just can help make their own decisions a little bit better. I'm an employer, not their mum. Yeah. And that's what I'm finding at the moment, that you have to train from the bottom up rather than from the middle ground. Okay. And so I think that could be a very interesting way of bringing them up to where we were.
I'm surprised at the agreement on the panel. Bring back national service.
Let's do it.
Gosh. Let's move on then. And I'm wondering what you make of this survey. So recently, 1 in 14 of the over 65s age group admitted that in the last month they'd used cannabis. And there is a request at the moment by some people in the government to legalise cannabis for personal use. Deputy PM Angela Rayner, though, says the government will not be changing the law. But people like London Mayor Sadiq Khan has backed a report saying possessing a small amount for personal use should be decriminalised. Jeff?
Well, I'm really upset you made me put my spliff out before we came in here. I appreciate it's a no smoking zone.
Well,
but, you know,
isn't it
I would
interesting?
prefer
It's
to
the
be more
older
chilled.
people. Yeah,
Huh?
right. Well, we know that older people drink more than younger people. They're
Yes.
all are also quite potty about this. But seriously,
On a serious
it's
note,
a crime.
yeah,
Should it be?
I've had some personal experience, well, not personal, through some of my customers with this issue, and also a friend's child. One of the issues we have is that the current cannabis is much stronger than it was in the 60s, and the skunk that we've got now, and there is evidence that it does cause psychosis. And while I appreciate, you know, everyone's right to kill themselves in whatever way they want, I've seen somebody have to be brought back from a mental institution in America because they'd started smoking this stuff heavily, and they'd gone completely psychotic.
Well, I mean, there might have been other factors involved, of course, you know.
Absolutely,
But, is
but
what
I've
you're
also
saying that if
seen-
you legalise it, you can regulate it better? Because that's an argument for
no,
legalising it.
Yeah, I suppose that.
Yeah.
I mean, that does make sense. But if you're legalising it, aren't you just endorsing it? I mean, how much effect do you think the warnings on cigarette packets are having?
Well, smoking has gone down.
Yeah, but vaping's gone up to compensate.
To
And we're
my
still not
mind-
sure whether that's better.
To my mind, it's a gateway drug. It's terrible for people's mental health,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be allowed. And the law is absolutely correct and shouldn't change.
So even though people might be doing it, we set a culture which says you really shouldn't be, and that's enough.
It's about moderation, isn't it? And I think that's where we struggle with, is knowing what moderation is. Meaning I sell a lot of cannabis tea at the moment by probably misuse. Don't try to smoke it. But
Just explain what that is, so the police aren't coming knocking on your door.
it's called cannabis tea, so
Yeah.
it's the good part of cannabis without the addictive part.
Right,
basically.
it's called, is it CBT rather
CBD.
than TCT?
That's correct.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can get the CBD in little squirty
Oil.
oils,
Yeah.
and it's all the
And
range in
squirts
the
in
middle
your
classes of
cappuccino.
West Bridgeford.
I
Yeah.
didn't know this even existed. This shows my naivety
It's
on
meant
the
to be
matter.
very good for
But
your
what does it
body.
do for you? Okay, so it relaxes you.
Well, it relaxes you, but it also helps with your joints, any aches and pains, your sleeping disorders. It's got so
Apparently.
many positives, and that's why, you know, maybe that's why it's more popular with the over 65s.
Well, this is what some people are saying, that actually when you've got muscle pains and joint pains, maybe that's why the older people are going back to the weed, but not to be legalised.
Isn't
Says
there
Jeff.
something
Just
actually
briefly.
about the fact that it's illicit? That's part of the fun.
Right.
Why take that away?
Okay, the forbidden fruit. All right, interesting. We'll come back for some more lively debate after this short break. Hello, I'm Fran, and my three panellists today chewing the news are Ian Baxter, Sangeeta Trina and Jeff Allen. And your thoughts now, please, on winter fuel payments. Now, this has been a thing, hasn't it? The Labour Party were elected, they're in government, and within a few months announced that older people would not be getting a winter fuel payment unless they were eligible for pension credit. And some thought, well, that's fine, because Mick Jagger doesn't need a couple of £100 to put his heating on, but it meant that most people lost out. So now it's turning its course, and is saying that it's going to have another look at this. We're not quite sure who is going to get the winter fuel payment next winter and who will. Who won't? So that's my question. Who should get it and how do we decide? What are your thoughts, Sangeeta?
I just think that policing it and figuring out who should get it and who shouldn't is probably costing them more than giving it to who had it in the first place. So you're taking something away from someone, which is causing this massive boom of voices, and maybe we get it wrong, and so someone's cold in the winter. I just think that it might just be worth just giving it to everyone.
Okay, can we afford that, Ian?
I would say give it to no one. It's ridiculous. We don't need winter fuel payments as such. Of course,
we don't need. Well, you might not need it, Ian.
And that's fair. But the least well off, of course, they need and deserve our support through pension credits or universal credit or whatever the mechanism is. We don't need this one-off payment or annual payment for fuel as such, and it's not really used for fuel for many people anyway. I think the government was absolutely right to get rid of it. It should be sticking to its guns in getting rid of it, and shouldn't be responding to public opinion in this way.
Those pensioners in Nottingham and in Nottinghamshire that have felt the chill this winter have already gone to the ends of their budgets. They're in the red, they're struggling.
What I would say is that the government's job is to protect the vulnerable and the least well off, and that's what they should be doing. And if the least well off and the most vulnerable have lost out as a result of this, then they should be compensated. Absolutely. I'm just saying, don't give it to millionaires, don't give it to the middle classes. That's what I'm saying.
So are you saying that the amount of money isn't necessarily the question for you? It needs to be put into the right pockets, and do that through benefits.
Yes, exactly. We have many ways in which we can give money to the least well off.
Pension credit?
Absolutely, if that's what's needed. I don't know the maths of it all, but I'm saying protect the most vulnerable, not the middle classes.
All right, that's interesting. Jeff, what do you think?
I have to agree. I mean, it's a weird situation where you're saying we'll subsidise the energy companies by taking taxpayers' money and giving it to people purportedly to pay for energy, which is a bit of a nonsense to start with. But the bigger issue is if you're looking at people who are on state pension, there was a study recently that said that in order to cover the basics of existence, you need about, I can't remember the precise numbers, but I think it's about 14,000 a year. And I think the top of the state pension tops out at about 11,000 a year. So there's a 3,000 shortfall just in the basic state pension. But rather than, generously handing out and taking back fuel payments, maybe someone should be looking a bit more strategically at that sort of thing.
But then the state pension gets given to absolutely everybody.
But that's because they paid into it.
Yes.
It's exactly the same as paying into a private pension fund.
I mean, I don't know how it works in other nations, but I know a lot of nations don't have a fixed state pension, and you are expected to pay into it during your lifetime. And if you don't, that's your loss.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think if that's made clear at the start of your working life, that you are responsible for your own pension, then you make that provision. But if the state is saying, we have a thing called national insurance, which should be providing for your pension.
You think that's your deal? Yeah.
Absolutely. And particularly when you're increasing employers' national insurance at the moment, there's a bit of duplicity going on here.
Okay.
We're increasing that, and we're not increasing this state pension.
It's about getting the money to the people that really need it, isn't it? What about, I think it was Martin Lewis, actually, the money-saving expert, that said one way that this could be done if we are to keep the winter fuel payment, which it looks like we are, is to give it according to the council tax band that you're on. So you don't have to re-administrate, you just look at the council tax band, and the chances are, if you're on a higher band, you probably don't need a winter fuel allowance because you're a wealthier person.
You need it all the more because your house is bigger.
House, But what about that as an idea?
I believe the tax system and benefit system in the UK is incredibly unnecessarily complicated. It can be simplified along the lines that Jeff was saying, and introducing new ways to calculate winter fuel payments and eligibility for them seems to be absolutely nuts in my view.
Interesting. Well, I think that word optics is used a lot at the moment. The optics of the Labour Party cutting the winter fuel payment weren't great, were they? And Labour Party members, some left the Labour Party, some here in Nottinghamshire, and became independent councillors because they were so appalled that the very party that said it was going to stand up for the vulnerable and the old are then the ones to take off the winter fuel payment. So I think it's committed to keeping this gesture because, you know, politically it's not gone down well. It's just who will get it. And so, yeah, they're going to make a decision, a final decision shortly, we believe, and Rachel Reeves will announce who will and who won't be in receipt of it. Now, we will move on and talk about the county council. I talked about local councillors there. We had some local elections, didn't we, a few weeks ago, and Nottinghamshire county councillors were voted on by you living here in the county. And it seems that you would like Reform to be running things because they are now in control. So my question is the county council in safe hands? Because recently, all the other parties, the Conservatives, Labour, the Independents, they said that Reform, they are catastrophic because they've cancelled 4 meetings in the first month in June. One is a cabinet meeting, others are committee meetings. So they're not confident. How confident are you, Ian?
Well, Reform don't have the track record, they don't have the experience of running a big organisation like Nottinghamshire Council. So that has to be a worry. But we live in a democracy, don't we? So Reform won. They are running the council. We have to hope they do a reasonable job of it, because if they don't, it's going to have implications for all of us. And so I wish them luck. I hope they do well, but I think they have a steep learning curve and there could be mistakes made along the way that we all suffer from.
Yeah, well, I think it's, again, voting for someone who isn't who we've had in already. Whether Reform can do it, I think Nigel Farage is probably on the recruitment drive all over the place at the minute. So I think he's got a big job in hand. I don't know how close Nottingham is to the top of that list, and so confidence probably not.
Interesting. I mean, you could say it's a nice problem for Reform to have, that suddenly, you know, there's a lot of interest in them, and the very fact that they're new, yes, they don't have that same political heritage, if you like, but they've got the fresh eyes, they've got the new ideas, you could say, and that's why people are going for it, Jeff.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's fantastic. And the fact that they've had the gumption to halt what are probably a number of unnecessary I've been stuck in council meetings, and frankly, you get so little done in them, you might as well not have them a lot of the time. Well, so the fact that they've now come out and said, right, let's put a halt to this, because all it's doing is consuming time and resource for no benefit. We will come up with a plan. We'll get people in to look at the structure and see how much money is being wasted. And believe me, there's a lot of money being wasted in local authorities.
Well, everyone
massive
says that,
amounts.
But what data do we have? You know, we've had stripping down, and it's very easy to say, oh, there's so much waste in the public sector. When is that ever going to stop, that narrative?
I mean, a great example, when I was more involved with the City Council than I am now, one of the people in one of the departments decided they were going to slim down their department because they felt that it was unnecessary to have the staffing levels they did. So they moved on, let's say 5-6 people, thought no more about it, and then bumped into the same people a month later, and they'd just been shifted to a different department. So when we talk about slimming down, I think all they do is move people around.
Well, we do know that the budget situation isn't easy. In the city, the county council, it's not easy either, although I don't think it's quite as desperate. But you're interesting. I mean, I should say with these cancelled meetings, the reasons aren't clear to us right now. I'm not sure it was because they were trying to save time. It might just be a getting the ducks in a row thing, which again, you've got to, maybe you have some time for that. They're brand new, a new leader of the council.
They're waiting for Nigel to send his instructions, aren't they? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah. Well, the problem with having a meeting like that, when you're not sure, it's a bit like when I shout charge, we need to be sure we're facing in the same direction. You know, and that's part of the problem, having meetings before you've decided on the direction you're going in. Because all you're going to do is have a talking shop.
The former leader of the council says they don't know what they're doing. But in a way, is that you?
I mean, that's refreshing, isn't it? Because we've had so many people who claim to know what they're doing who've messed it up.
I suppose my point is, if you're brand new and you're suddenly running a council, it will take a while to pick things up. But go on,
but surely, if you're going for that position in the first place, you've got a reason to go for it. You just don't say, well, today I'm going to open a new shop, but I don't know what I'm doing in that shop. I'll just open it. It just they put themselves
They needed to be more ready, game ready.
Did they expect to win though? Did they? Did they
Well,
really
that says it
expect to
all.
win?
Yeah.
But the other thing, of course, is you do have a whole team of officers.
Yes.
Within all the councils. And the same in government. You've got your mandarins at Whitehall who keep it running.
We'll pause it and get back on this debate in just a moment. Hello, this is the final part of the Notts TV debate with me, Frances Finn, and my three local panellists, Ian Baxter, Sangeeta China and Jeff Allen. So we're going to talk about a subject that is quite divisive and very personal. If you have lost someone you love, you have a grave for them, you might be the type that likes to bring their personal effects, things like flowers, maybe teddies. Some people like to build something that's personalising the grave. Well, we've reported quite a lot on Notts TV, the ongoing debate about this in Broxtowe, after someone complained that it was getting a bit out of hand. And so the councillors reminded families that they mustn't overdo it. And if they did, their memorabilia would be removed. So this is being discussed on and on. You know, what should the rules be? What should you be allowed to put on the grave? Should these items be removed or not? And we're still not really at a conclusion on it. But it does raise the question, if you want to mourn someone you've lost, should there be rules? How should you be managed with the way you want to grieve? I know it's a sensitive subject, but what's your instinct on it, Ian?
Well, obviously, sympathy for those who are mourning and so on, that's got to be a starting point. But I think the watchword is dignity, really. We all want to see dignity, I think, in our graveyards, in our churchyards and so on. So I think allowing people to push that envelope too far doesn't make sense to me. So I think some rules are important, but also balancing that with respecting that people are grieving and they want to grieve in their own way. So we have to give them some freedom and some rules.
The considerations are ever-present health and safety awareness. So in other words, you can't have something that's quite a big temporary structure that could fall or, you know, create mess. And the other is how easy it might be to maintain the graveyards. So, you know, mowing lawns, getting access. Others, though, say this is just an excuse for snobbery.
I think, I mean, excuse me, but I don't really know how graveyards work or space works, but I thought you bought a space, or you had to, you know, acquire this space like you acquire your house. And it's like someone going into your house and saying, you can't do that to it, you can't do that to it. I know other people can see it, but at the end of the day, it's your bit of property, land, whatever you want to call it. Surely you should be able to do whatever you want. If it's a structure or something, when you do it to your house, you have to apply. Maybe there's some kind of process.
Well, exactly. If you've got a house and you want to paint it pink with yellow spots, there might be some rules that say you can't if you live in a particular part of Nottinghamshire. So it's not entirely your own will, is it? Even if you own that
What
property.
about people who have the graves next door? And I think your house is a good analogy. Because if you've got a house next door to someone who decides that they're going to run a scrapyard from their front drive, you're not going to be very happy about it. And I don't want to trivialize, graveyards, because they are very emotive places. But if someone starts putting a load of what I would consider personally to be tat around a grave, then for the people either side who maybe just keep their graves clean, well kept, few flowers, and they grieve privately, that's going to really upset them. So
But that's taking it to extremes, isn't it? And that's where you do need to get some rules in place. But those are set out for your house. Maybe there should be some kind of rules.
Isn't it sad?
Generally, there are rules.
Do you
There
not
are
think
rules.
it's sad, though, that we've come to the point in society where we need rules about this? When I was younger, graveyards were, kept in a certain way. Now we have a society that seems to think it's okay to, tape a teddy bear to a gravestone or whatever. Why is this suddenly necessary? Why have our standards of decency and dignity gone down that far?
I think it's personal taste, isn't it? We are
Or
a bit more
lack of
expressive
taste.
with our emotions. We're perhaps a little bit more sentimental and able to show that more than we
Mawkish,
were.
you mean?
Well, also there, I think, are more council-run, perhaps, areas, because, as more and more people die, you need more space. It used to be often that a cemetery was attached to a church, and the church has its own rules. So it's not your piece of land, but the church, allows you to bury your loved one, and you can commemorate them in the way that befits the rules of that particular church. So, yeah, I take your point, though. We grieve in different ways, but what is appropriate? There are rules. Do you think if you transgress the rule, it's okay to be told you need to take that stuff away? Because that's been the objection.
Well, a rule has to ultimately be enforced at some level, doesn't it? So at some level, then yes, that's the logical answer.
Right. Well,
The other thing is, why in this day and age are we still burying people?
Well, sometimes it's ashes that are interred. And,
But you don't need a whole
No, but you
grave
do.
on
You can have a little headstone
Yeah.
and have it as their plot.
Oh,
Yeah,
Fair
and that's
enough.
we see those being decorated similarly. Yeah.
I still have my wife in the front room.
Do you? Oh, well, and you can decorate your front room as you wish.
Exactly.
Teddies or no teddies, Jeff. Let's move on and talk about schools now. School meals are in the news at the moment because you remember the days when I think it was all infant school pupils were entitled to free school meals. But then, times have changed and it differs, as to who is eligible. So the government is saying it's going to increase the number of children that can get free school meals to all families in receipt of universal credit, and that means we're looking at an extra 500,000 families of primary school age that are going to get free school meals. So that's the rule now. What should the rule be? Should it be everyone? Should the taxpayer be funding the lunches of all these children, you might argue, from another view? What are you thinking, Sangeeta?
I remember a long time ago going to school with a little brown envelope with some money in it to pay for my lunch, or part of my lunch. It was just a tiny input into the vast pot that's needed, but we got a decent lunch. And I think you do need to input to get good food out. And I think it's really, really important that everybody contributes who can contribute. So I don't think everybody needs a free lunch, but I think better lunches would come with better funding.
There is research to say that the better fed the child, the better their academic performance. So you could say that as taxpayers, we are investing in the future of our nation, Jeff. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, from personal experience, I used to get the same. I used to get given this money to pay for lunch, which I never did. I just went out and spent it and then starved for the rest of the week. I don't think my parents could quite work out why I was so hungry when I got home. But it seemed a fair deal to me.
Right,
but no, on a more serious note, I think it's important that children are well fed, and we're seeing, nutritional problems happening in children these days because maybe their parents aren't that smart and they don't realise how to feed them properly, and they think that a bottle of Coke and a bag of crisps is a great way to send a kid off to school. So I think You know, if they can get one good meal a day, then that's a good thing. Paying for it, I don't know the economics. I don't know the balance between paid for school meals and unpaid for school meals. But maybe it is something we could be investing in.
What are the advantages do you see on a sort of business level here, Ian? I mean, I'm thinking if a school knows it's got a certain budget guaranteed, perhaps the quality of the meals could go up.
Maybe, and maybe not. I think we've all had experience of poor school meals as well as, you know, some good ones. So I'm not certain about that. But I think the government's doing a good thing to expand free school meals. I think that's a good step. What worries me about it, though, is the kind of stigma of people noticing that, you know, some people pay for them, some people get them free.
And that's why all children under a previous government were given them to make it equal for everybody.
But then the government doesn't really have any money at the moment, so I don't know how we're going to pay for it. Having said which, I think, you know, everyone needs to eat, so it's probably a good investment.
But again, it's back to, isn't it, how big should the state be? What role should it have in feeding our kids? Do we need to be handing that responsibility over to every taxpayer?
And actually teaching people to eat good, nutritious food, I think, is an important thing.
Listening to the debate around this, Sangeeta, I've heard some say within education that eyes have not been on school meals enough lately. So do you remember Jamie Oliver going in with his get rid of the turkey twizzlers?
Yes.
There are many schools I've heard that have kind of slipped back into the beige food, and it's not great. And some of them, speaking from a bit of experience, are very expensive for not very much. So perhaps if this will bring more eyes on school food.
Yeah, 100%, meaning Wales, born and brought up in Wales, free food is now there for all kids. And I don't know, do people coming out of Wales, are they cleverer? Are they more focused? I don't know, but I know that healthy people make for healthy lives and healthy decisions. And I think expanding, most definitely, but I think contributing, I would contribute towards making sure the school is focused on that part of this child's life.
Yeah, and we certainly know, don't we, in Nottingham in particular at the moment, huge challenges again. I mean, this is a tough time. I guess there would be a better peace of mind knowing that every school is given a good lunch to those kids. 500,000 kids more across the country. I mean, that's a lot of kids.
We talk about investing in infrastructure, transport, for example, £2 billion coming to the region. But actually, what are our best assets? Our best assets as a country are our people, and in particular, our young people, because that's where the future lies, right? So I think there is a case for focusing investment on our young people.
Right, well, I think we've given the news a very good chew today, and my thanks to all of you, to Ian Baxter, Sangeeta Trainer and to Jeff Allen, all Nottinghamshire panellists giving their views on the news. I'm Frances Finn, and it's been great to have you watching. You can share your views with us online. Find us on notstv.com. But for now, bye-bye and thanks for watching.